Bismillah. Is it on? Is it on? Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, I just lost my voice this morning, I don't know why. But anyway, inshallah it will come back. So today, inshallah, we'll go over Bab al-Azm, the chapter on resolve, or the station of resolve, and al-Haj wal-Umrah. We will start the book of al-Haj wal-Umrah in our fiqh session. First, the station of resolve, Bab al-Azm. Imam al-Harawi rahimahullah said, قال الله عز وجل فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله فإذا عزمت فتوكل على الله. Chapter on resolve, Allah Almighty said, and when you have resolved, it's translated when you have decided. You could translate it as when you have resolved. I usually use Sahih International for translation. They translated it as, and when you have decided, then rely upon Allah. But certainly you could change decided and translate it as resolved instead of decided, which would be a little better because azm is resolve. So, and when you have resolved, then rely upon Allah. Sheikh then said, العزم هو تحقيق القصد طوعا أو كرها وهو على 3 درجات. Resolve is the actualization of the intent. Qasd, you remember last time we talked about qasd. Qasd is to set your direction. When you come out from your home, you have to set your direction. You have to, everything will be based on your destination. You're coming out from home. Do you want to go to the grocery store? You want to go to work? You want to go pick up your kids? If you don't set up your direction at the time you depart from home, then you'll be at a loss and you'll miss your destination. So qasd is that phase where you set your direction, and when in the journey of your life, you have to set the direction. Qasd and azm are interconnected; they are related, but they are not the same thing. Azm, after you have set your direction, set your objectives, your goals, that is not only about your life in general, but it is about every goal, every objective in your life that you set out to accomplish. You will then need to recruit the azm, your resolve, to accomplish this goal. The Sheikh is saying, particularly with the ultimate goal, the most important objective, you will force yourself to accomplish that goal. It is not optional. تحقيق القصد طوعا أو كرها. It is basically to actualize that intent or qasd, which is the pleasure of Allah. The ultimate goal in our lives should be the pleasure of Allah. And you will say to yourself, you will do that, whether you like it or not, whether you like that path or not, you will be forced to take it. That straight path, that sirat al-mustaqim, to the pleasure of Allah, to the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Jannah and the hereafter, inshallah. This is the path that you will take. You will walk down that path, whether you like it or not. So, تحقيق القصد, accomplishing the goal, the objective, actualization of the intent, طوعا or karha, willingly or unwillingly. Willingly or unwillingly refers to your nafs, because you will not give your nafs any sort of breaks or cut your nafs in a slack or anything. You will force it. That's why I included that story from Abdullah ibn Rawaha in the footnotes when in the Battle of Mu'tah, when he felt a little bit reluctant to go down to the battlefield and engage the enemies, the Romans and their allies at the time. He said to his nafs, أقسمت يا نفس لتنزلن أو لتكرهن إن أجلب الناس وشدوا الرنة ما لي أراك تكرهين الجنة. So I swear, O nafs, you shall go down to the battlefield. You shall engage the enemy. You shall enter the battlefield. لَتَنْزِلِنَّ, you will do that. أَوْ لَتُكْرَهِنَّ, or you'll be forced to do it. So you do it willingly, otherwise you'll be forced to do it. I'll force you to do it. In أَجْلَبَ النَّاسُ وَشَدُّ الرَّنَّ, when the cries have risen and the people have gathered and the cries have risen, so that when the war is heated, مَا لِي أَرَاكِ تَكْرَهِينَ الْجَنَّةِ, what's the matter with you? Why do you really hate paradise? Do you really hate paradise? So this is it. This is the right thing to do. You will do it, and then when you set out to accomplish any objective, that's what you do to your nafs. You don't give your nafs any sort of excuses to slacken. You will do it. That's it. We're done. You're taking that path. This is a straight path. You're not taking shortcuts. You're not giving yourself concessions. And that is what azm is about. And the Sheikh said, وَهُوَ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ دَرَجَاتٍ, and it is 3 levels. الدرجة الأولى, the first level, إباء الحال على العلم. إباء الحال على العلم. The first level is the rebellion of the hal, which is the spiritual state, against the limitations of knowledge. He said against knowledge. When your spiritual state rebels against knowledge, that is against the limitations of knowledge. And that is and he continued to say why you should not allow the knowledge to override your spiritual state, but you should allow your spiritual state to override the knowledge. If you know that the thing is, this statement is problematic, right? It is problematic. We have to agree. It is problematic. But how do you understand this statement? Well, look at the history of Sheikh al-Harawi, rahimahullah. Read his biography. Read his other works. Read his other statements in this book, Manazil As-Saa'ireen, and you will be able to appropriately interpret this statement in a way that is not problematic, that does not cause any issues. So the Sheikh is not asking you to ignore, overlook, sideline the knowledge of the scriptures, the knowledge of Sharia, and to allow your zawq, your sort of intuitive perception, or your ilham, your inspiration, to override the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. That would not be expected of the Sheikh. Therefore, that is not how we should interpret a statement like this. The Sheikh is asking you for certain things. The Sheikh is telling you that this ilm could be sometimes too dry, could need to be, may need sometimes to be complemented by zawq and al-ilham, by the intuitive perception and the inspiration, by the spiritual state, because ilm sometimes and oftentimes with many people, it leads them to what? To being superfluous, frivolous, too technical or hyper-technical, they can be completely sort of unspirited, like they have no spirit in their ibadah. Their ibadah may not serve any purpose or function. Their ibadah may be mechanical, mere ritualism. They may be taking shortcuts whenever they can, concessions whenever they can. They may be applying double standards. They'll use one standard for themselves and one standard for others. They could use preemption, the haqq al-shufa, against one of their neighbors, and then deny the other neighbor haqq al-shufa because they know the technicalities of what, to say and what to do in such scenarios. And they would be abiding by knowledge because they can always cite and quote and, cite references and quote scholars and so on, quote ahadith and quote ayat and so on and so forth. So the knowledge without the spiritual state, the knowledge that is not guided by the spiritual state, the knowledge that is not guided by the proper zawq, the proper intuitive perception, could be very harmful and could make us very deviant and very stiff and very crooked and tricky, you know. واسألهم عن القرية التي كانت حاضرة البحر إذ يعدون في السبت إذ تأتيهم حيتانهم يوم سبتهم شرعا ويوم لا يسبتون لا تأتيهم كذلك نبلوهم بما كانوا يفسقون. So remember the story of the people of the Sabbath, or you know, and how knowledge sometimes and hyper technicality sometimes can make us deviate from the objectives, the divine objectives. This is what the Sheikh is telling you. So he's telling you, ensure that your proper zawq guide that knowledge, so that knowledge does not need to take in shortcuts, concessions, injudiciously taking shortcuts and concessions, because concessions sometimes are okay to take. But injudiciously taking shortcuts and concessions, being hyper-technical, using double standards, being too ritualistic, and so on and so forth. So here he's telling you, make sure that your hal rebels against those limitations of knowledge, you know, limitations of this knowledge of the intellect, which is different from ma'rifah, the knowledge of the heart. And once you have done this, once your knowledge does not lead you to, you know, all of those flaws of knowledge, and your hal, your spiritual state, has a good control over your knowledge, then you'll be able to achieve those objectives. One, beholding the flashes of disclosure. Beholding the flashes of disclosure. Because oftentimes, if you just go by technicality, you may not get any disclosures from Allah. Al-kashf from Allah is not really a superstitious thing or anything. It is basically to guide your heart, to show you the way, to show you the different stations. You know, all of those stations that we talk about, you know, wakefulness, yaqadha, tafakkur, reflection, humility, tawbah, repentance, self-reckoning, muhasabah, watchfulness, muraqabah, all of the stations that we talk about, you need guidance to be able to get to them and to be able to properly utilize those stations for, you know, the purpose of this journey, to get to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you need disclosure for this, because, you know, just reliance on knowledge, the transmitted knowledge, reliance on the transmitted knowledge without the guidance of your heart that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not get you to your destination. Will not get you to your destination. You should show poverty to Allah and need to Allah, and you should tell Him, no matter how much I know, you know, I will not be able to get to you unless you invite me, unless you show me the way and you guide me, and you have those disclosures. And then you have disclosures also about the flaws of your heart. You need to have disclosures about the flaws of your heart and the flaws of your actions, because all of us don't see them, right? You know, because you could be the most crooked person and you're not seeing it. How often do we see this? Like, you know, people just don't see their flaws. You could make lots of mistakes, grammatical mistakes, you know, and you don't, because they are your mistakes. You're not going to be able to realize them until someone points them out to you. The same applies to your heart. You know, you could have, the same applies to your actions. The same applies to your heart. And then, you know, the grammatical mistakes that you make. You know, if I make a grammatical mistake here and someone of the brothers comes after the lecture and tells me, you know what, he said such and such, or the proper word for this would be such and such, then I should be thankful, right? But if you have flaws in your heart, who's going to tell you? Who among you would be able, I mean, sometimes you do recognize some manifestations on the exterior, but who other than Allah would be able really to tell you about the flaws in the small little crevices, dark crevices in your heart, and allow you to just do a deep cleaning of your heart from those flaws? No one. So this requires kashf. This requires disclosure. Allah should, you know, requires, you know, you to have these disclosures from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then disclosures when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah. And these are the highest and most important disclosures. You know, everybody here knows that Allah is al-Razzaq, right? If someone tells you tomorrow that you'll probably get laid off, will you be anxious? Most of us will be anxious, and some of us will panic. You know, particularly people who, you know, may have issues finding a different job, or they're particularly comfortable in this job. It means that your knowledge of the name al-Razzaq is not really solid. It's not a ma'rifah of the heart. It's just, you know it because you read it. And you may have given a lecture about it. You may have done, you may have written a paper. But it's completely, these are two different levels. And there could be some great dissonance, the complete separation between those two different levels, the knowledge of the intellect and the knowledge of the heart. Okay, so if you don't allow your ilm, your dry technical ilm, to subvert your hal, then you'll be able to behold some of the flashes of this disclosure. لِلشَّيْمِ بَرْقِ الْكَشْفِ, beholding the flashes of disclosure. وَاسْتِدَامَةِ نُورِ الْأُنْسِ, enjoying the light of comforting intimacy indefinitely. Enjoying the light of comforting intimacy indefinitely. You could be serving. You could be in service. You could be in worship. عاملة ناصبة. Inshallah, we will not be عاملة ناصبة. But some people could be completely misguided about their worship. They are working hard, but it is all in vain. It's just all that they get out of it is the fatigue. وَرُبَّ صَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعُ وَالْعَطَشِ. How many fasting person who will not get anything out of his fasting except hunger and thirst. So that is true. Nur al-Uns, the comforting intimacy, to be invited to the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will require you to have this hal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not just about knowledge, and it's not just about technicality, and it's not just about the actions of the exterior. It is about the condition of your heart. You could be serving outside, outside the presence of the king. There are a lot of servants that are serving outside the doors, but they don't get, allowed into the door, or the gates of the palace. Some people are just taking care of the sheep outside. Some people are serving in the backyards, and some people are in the presence of the king. That's the comforting intimacy. And you don't earn this by, dry technicalities. You will have to have a hal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to earn this and to be welcome into the presence of Allah and to enjoy that comforting intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he said, وَالْإِجَابَةُ لِإِمَاتَةِ الْهَوَى, pursuing the annihilation of passions, the annihilation of passions. Annihilations of passions is easy, it's clear. Hawa, biases, passions, these are our greatest enemies. Our passions and biases, our greatest enemies are our biases and passions. And al-ijaba li-imatat al-hawa, pursuing the annihilation of passions and biases, is extremely important. So here, l'shaymi barq al-kashf, beholding the flashes of disclosure, explained that istidamat nur al-uns, enjoying the light of comforting intimacy, al-ijaba li-imatat al-hawa, pursuing the annihilation of passions. And then the Sheikh said, الدرجة الثانية, الدرجة الثانية, the second level, الاستغراق في لوائح المشاهدة, getting consumed in the four tastes of mushahada. The mushahada here is beholding Allah, beholding the divine. The beholding of the divine, or the beholding of Allah, will make you consumed into it, consumed in the four tastes. He said لوائح المشاهدة, not al-mushahada necessarily, but the lawa'ih of the glimpses of mushahada, or four tastes of the mushahada, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to behold them with the eyes of your heart, not the eyes of your head, because, we will not be able to do this in the dunya. will be able to do this in the hereafter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who will have that joy. Ameen ya Rabb. But anyway, he means here mushahada, with the eyes of your heart, that you'll be able to behold Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the eyes of your heart. And if you do, then you'll be consumed into this. The beauty, the magnificence, the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will distract you from anything. And that's what he means by being consumed into it. Because if it is true, there would be no barriers, no mediums between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can you imagine? Imagine the light of the sun versus the light of a candle. It will dissipate the light of the candle. So when you are beholding the beauty and glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can you be distracted by anyone? Can anyone be a barrier and block your sight from that mushahada? Absolutely not. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. And then he said, وَاسْتِنَارَةُ ضِيَاءَ الطَّرِيقِ, the illumination of the road. The illumination of the road. Illumination of the road. When you set out on that path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you set out to that path, you're using a map. You have a map in your hand, and you're using the map. And you're looking for the signposts, right? On the two sides, the milestones, on the two sides of the road. And you keep on doing this. When you get closer to the city, and, when you get closer to the city, your destination, the road will be lit by the lights of the city. And that is what he means here, that now you're getting closer, and your road will be illuminated by the lights of the city. And then he said, وَاسْتِجْمَعُ قُوَّةَ الْإِسْتِقَامَةِ, the recruitment of all energies of uprightness. The recruitment of all energies of uprightness. Istijma' quwa al-istiqama. Recruitments, quwa, powers, energies of istiqama, uprightness. So when you get close to the city, you get even closer to the city. Now it's not just that you're on the road and the lights of the city have illuminated your path. You're not really reliant on the map in your hand or the signpost that much. But now you actually see the gates of the city. And you see people after running a marathon, and if you see the end line, you can sprint, even though you're so tired, even though, you've been running for 22 whatever miles or whatever they run. But if you see the end line, and you see the flags at the end, and you see when you see the gates of the city, then that will help you recruit all the energies inside you, the energies of uprightness or uprightness. Then he talks about al-Daraj As-Thalitha, and certainly al-Azm is one of the stations. The different levels of Azm are so far apart from each other, because al-Azm is a qualifier. Al-Azm is a criterion. Al-Azm distinguishes, sorts out people from one another, not at the lower level or the middle level. Al-Azm was the only quality that was mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah to sort out the greatest of Allah's chosen. Who are the greatest of Allah's chosen? The prophets. And among the prophets, you have the messengers. And among the messengers, you have an elite, the most elite group. So this is the most elite group in the history of humanity, the 5 messengers. وَإِذَا أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ وَمِنْكَ وَمِنْ نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى ابْنِ مَرْيَمَ وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا in Surah Al-Ahzab. And behold, remember when we took the covenant from the Nabiyyin and from you and from Nuh, from Ibrahim, from Musa, from Isa ibn Maryam. Those 5 messengers are called Ulul Azmi min al-Rusul, the messengers with great resolve. Allah says in Surah Al-Ahqaf, فَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Then be patient like those messengers of great resolve had shown patience before you. Allah is commanding His Messenger ﷺ to basically look up to those messengers. Which ones? Ulul Azm, messengers of great resolve. So the criterion that sorts out this group of people, which is the greatest of the greatest of the greatest, is al-Azm. So you can imagine that this station is an enormous station, and the difference in the levels of this station, the different levels of this station, the distance between them is enormous, So he says here, وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّالِثَةِ, third level, مَعْرِفَةُ عِلَّةِ الْعَزْمِ, recognizing the flaws of azm, or the flaws of resolve. Now, people who have azm, people who have resolve, they need to recognize the flaws of their resolve. And this is basically part of the highest degree, which is the third degree, that is for the basically the upper crust, or the uppermost crust of people. So معرفة علة العزم, which is recognizing the flaws of azm. What is علة العزم? علة العزم is to attribute your azm to yourself. And all of us do this, and all of us fall into this. How many times did you look at someone like a slacker, like someone who's like too lazy, even if it is a family member, and you said to yourself, I did this and this and this and that. I were in that position and I was able to pull myself up. And so on and so forth. Like, haven't you done this? Yes, you have. Probably you did. Don't deny it. Then, that is one of the flaws of azm, is that you think that you really did it. And that's a big problem, because it could ruin it all for you, unless you attribute it to Al-Wahhab subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who gave you that gift, the one who gave you that power, the one who gave you that resolve. It could destroy you. That just thought that you did it on your own, or that this is your inherent quality, or that you're deserving of it, or that you're entitled to it, or your own effort. I was there, and I was able to pull myself up, or, and so on. It's not like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got me out of there. And then you would be pointing out to people that, rely on Allah, and Allah will get you out of your predicament, or your difficulty, your hardship, etc., your failures. So that is illat al-azm. That is the major flaw. That is the most major flaw of azm, is that when you attribute that azm to yourself, and it makes you proud, and it makes you arrogant. ثم العزم على التخلص من العزم. Then resolving to get rid of resolve. Then you resolve to get rid of your resolve. Get rid of which resolve? Get rid of the resolve that you are attributing to yourself. Get rid of your hawla and quwwah, your might and your influence, your power. You disavow your own hawla and quwwah, and you basically rely on Allah's hawla and quwwah. And you tastamid minhu al-hawl wal-quwwah, and you seek it, you solicit it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he said, ثم الخلاص من تكاليف ترك العزم, then getting rid of the after effect of the disavowal of resolve. Basically, he's trying to tell you that you need to strip yourself of your, or strip your ego, or crush your ego completely, or strip your ego off of you like a snake does to her skin. So you just need to move away from your ego. He says that after you have gotten rid, after you have abandoned your own hawl and quwwah, disavowed your hawl and quwwah, and you don't think anymore that this azm is yours, and you attribute it to Allah, looking back and thinking that you abandoned it, that you walked away from your azm, entails a thought that you had at one point a legitimate claim to it, that it was yours, and you give it up. And that thought is flawed, because you did not have anything to begin with. You never had anything. So to think that you gave up anything is flawed, because you did not have anything to begin with. Who were you? Where was your azm when you were a nutfa, like a drop of semen, when you were non-existent before that, when you were a fetus in the womb of your mother? So just to think that you moved away or disavowed your hawl and quwwah, or moved away from the thought of having resolve or any of that, that very thought means that you, deep inside, still think that you had some legitimate claim to your hawl and quwwah or to your resolve, which is flawed. And then he said, فَإِنَّ الْعَزَائِمَ لَمْ تُورِثْ أَرْبَابَهَا مِيرَاثًا أَكْرَمَ مِنْ وُقُوفِهِمْ عَلَى عِلَلِ الْعَزَائِمِ فإن العزائم لم تورث أربابها ميراثا أكرم من وقوفهم على علل العزائم. For nothing resolve can earn its people that is better than showing them its flaws. Nothing resolve can earn its people that is better than showing them the flaws of resolve. Basically guiding them to the third level, which is that level of recognizing that you have no resolve, in fact, and it is all Allah's, and you have no hawl and quwwah, and it is all Allah's. Okay, so azm is one of the greatest stations. It is a criterion. It sorts out people from one another. And we should have this azm in not only in the overall journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and accomplishing the greatest and the ultimate intent from our lives, which is the pleasure of Allah, but when we set out on any project venture, when we set, any goals, objectives, we must accomplish them, and we must be firm with ourselves. It will be done. It's good. It will be done. That's the straight path. You're going to walk down that path. You're not taking shortcuts. You're not slowing down. You will be forced to take it, whether or not you like it. However, the azm that we have is not the azm of the mutakabbirin, it is the azm of the mutawakkilin. And there are certain things that will enable us to have azm and to keep it and to promote it and to have more of it. First thing is tawakkul, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why the Shaykh started that chapter by فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Once you have decided, once you have resolved, then rely upon Allah. Because without His help, you have to say to Him, without your help, I can't do anything because I really have no resolve except what you give me, except what you grant me. So that's number one. Number two, after tawakkul is plenty of dua, supplication, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for azm. One of the most beautiful du'as of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Shaddad ibn Qaws, إِذَا كَنَزَ النَّاسُ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ فَاكْتَنِزْ هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَاتِ. If people are stocking up on gold and silver, you stock up on those words, or or فَأَكْثَرْ مِنْ هَذِهِ الْكَلِمَاتِ in some reports, then you frequently say those words. اللهم إني أسألك الثبات في الأمر والعزيمة على الرشد وأسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك وأسألك حسن عبادتك وأسألك وشكر نعمتك وأسألك من خير ما تعلم وأعوذ بك من شر ما تعلم وأستغفرك لما تعلم. اللهم إني أسألك الثبات في الأمر. Oh Allah, I ask you steadfastness in this affair. والعزيمة على الرشد. العزيمة, عزم, resolve, on uprightness, on uprightness. وموجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك, the means to your mercy and forgiveness. حسن عبادتك وشكر نعمتك, gratefulness for your favors and excellence in your worship. Allow me to show gratefulness and allow me to excel in your worship. وأسألك من خير ما تعلم, and I ask you of the good that you know of, all the good that you know of. Seek refuge in you from all the evil that you know of. وأستغفرك لما تعلم, and I ask for your forgiveness for that which you know, and I don't, my flaws, my mistakes, my shortcomings, my errors that you know, and I don't. One of the other du'as of the Prophet ﷺ concerning the same thing, is اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من ضلع الدين وغلبة الرجال. Allah, I seek refuge in you from ham and hazan, from worry and grief, for al-ajz and kasal. Ajz is incapacity. Ajz is incapacity, helplessness, powerlessness. It's beautiful because it is beautiful also when the Prophet ﷺ, when Allah says, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا, don't be weak and don't grieve. Don't be weak. When the Prophet ﷺ says, استعن بالله ولا تعجز, seek Allah's help and don't be powerless, as if powerlessness is within our control, as if not being powerless is within our control, because it is. Most of the time it is. Most of the time our powerlessness is a lie. We always exaggerate in our capacities, to others, but to ourselves, we always, lie to ourselves about our potential and our capacity. And we say, you can't do this, this is too much for you, you can't handle that, just take it easy, don't worry, and stuff like that. But powerlessness is basically your own glass ceiling that you made for yourself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that you could break through it. And the Prophet is telling you that you could break through it. So, وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنَ الْعَجْزِ وَالْكَسَلِ, I seek refuge in you from ajz, powerlessness, kasal, indolence, laziness. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنَ الْجُبْنِ وَالْبُخْلِ, that is cowardice and miserliness. وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ ضَلْعِ الدَّيْنِ وَغَلَبَةِ الرِّجَالِ, that is the overwhelming debt and being overpowered by men. So another beautiful supplication. So you make plenty of supplication to ask Allah for resolve and to seek refuge in Him from powerlessness and laziness. That's the sort of the counter to resolve. And then, so tawakkul and dua, and then qudwa and suhbah. Qudwa, clear. If the Prophet needed qudwa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if a Prophet needed to be reminded that he needs to look for qudwa, needs to look for role models, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ahqaf, فَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ, then be patient, show patience like those of messengers of great resolve have shown patience before you. And if the Prophet needs to be reminded of the story of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam 70 times in the Quran, and a lot of other stories, then certainly we need the qudwa. And like I always said, just the Sahaba, certainly the Prophets, that is tier one, but closer to us, a little bit closer to us, and to our level would be the tier of the Sahaba, and certainly learning about their seerah is very beneficial, particularly in this regard. in recruiting your azm. So that's qudwa. And finally, suhba, the company. If you surround yourself by people who have no azm or who have no aspiration, have no high aspirations, then that will be your own loss. That will be your own loss. You will always tend to benefit by surrounding yourself with people of greater resolve than you, people who have greater resolve. So just make sure that you have the right company, the right company. And that's it with the station of azm, the station of resolve. I will try, inshallah, to take a little bit less time because the chapter of Hajj is a little bit, we may run into some problems trying to finish out that chapter before those of you who are going to Hajj make it to Hajj. Therefore, I'll try to give a little bit more time to the fiqh session over the next 8 weeks because it will be very hard to squeeze the chapter of Hajj, the book of Hajj, into 8 weeks. We may need to use a little bit more time for the fiqh session, and we may need to double up the fiqh sessions at some point in the future if we are running behind. قولوا قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. We will have